responded that this kind of attitude is not acceptable, that a game company can't just create a game and then wash their hands of potential consequences and responsibilities, regardless of whether there's regulation in place or not, that they have a due diligence to collect certain data and use that to inform how they can create their games in the most responsible and healthy manner possible, adding that maybe game companies should share this data to inform others. Now, by data, I'm assuming James is referring to information like average playtime or average money spent, statistics like that rather than personal information, as the exchange of personal information would be unacceptable amongst the general public and violate all kinds of laws. But in terms of how much people play and spend on average, data like that, sharing that could indeed provide some useful insight. But I get the sense that game companies aren't too keen on revealing that information, given that it might reveal some skeletons that they don't want the public to see in their closet. James then pointed out that not all companies have this kind of negligent attitude, though some definitely do. James then added that she doesn't believe only the games industry should be doing research on the potentially harmful effects of certain video games, that government bodies should independently conduct their own as well, calling for public funding on this front, especially given she's been told by a colleague that gaming is several years behind gambling when it comes to protecting the vulnerable, about which she said, quote, "If that is true, that is lamentable and the industry has a job to do." The final topic of discourse was the freemium model that mobile titles often employ. James said that while the model does give rise to companies with aggressive commercial objectives, she also said that this isn't always the case. And yeah, that's true. Not all monetized free-to-play titles are super egregious. There are free-to-play games that get it right. As she pointed out, quote, "With a more mature company, they should be seeing the benefits of demonstrating a care for their user base in the way you've outlined." Yes, some companies are pretty good about it, but it would be naive to say that the majority of major free-to-play games don't employ aggressive, harmful monetization schemes. Most companies get into the freemium model because they want to monetize, plain and simple, not because they're looking to be mature and make the best game possible. In my opinion, saying that, well, not everyone does it isn't a good excuse for not keeping something in check, because when it comes to egregious monetization, more than enough companies do it to warrant scrutiny, to warrant regulation, to warrant checks and balances. This gathering finally concluded with James sharing final thoughts that read as follows. "It's like any industry. There are some companies who have this short-term view that the more time you spend on my product, the more money I make. That is not true of all companies in the sector or indeed of any other sector. There are companies who have a longer-term, more responsible attitude to their customer base compared with other companies who have a short-term and more aggressive commercial view of their user base, and the latter need to be brought into line." So overall, I think that James brought up a few good points, but there's also a lot about her take that I disagree with. I get the sense that she's definitely not a gamer and that she doesn't quite understand why these games and their monetization tactics, microtransactions or loot boxes, cosmetic or pay to win, can be so addictive to certain types of gamers. I will say this, though, she didn't come off as clueless as EA's VP of Legal and Government Affairs when she talked about surprise mechanics and all this bullshit during that hearing. James wasn't trying to rebrand loot boxes. She wasn't claiming loot boxes are completely innocent or ethical. She was arguing against the notion that loot boxes are gambling the way UK defines it. She was making the case that there are different cases for these kinds of mechanics, some worse than others, and that more research needs to be done before regulation can be enacted and fully pursued. From what I'm reading here, she's asking for further due diligence before taking tangible measures, which, okay, sure. And she does conclude at the end that for certain companies who are clearly being predatory in their business models, they need to be, quote, brought into line. At the same time, though, I do think she's underestimating how serious of an issue loot boxes can be for a significant number of people. If the government wants to hear from people who actually play and understand games in terms of why they believe loot boxes are so harmful, I would highly recommend they watch Jim Sterling's July 1st Jimquisition episode titled The Addictive Cost of Predatory Video Game Monetization. There, Jim not only highlights plenty of articles detailing cases of players' excessive spending on games featuring monetization tactics such as FIFA, Fortnite, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, so on and so forth. He also highlights a presentation by Tribeflame CEO Torolf Jernstrom, in which he literally breaks down how loot boxes are tweaked to maximize psychological manipulation of the masses.
A summary of a huge bunch of behavioral psychology. So the tricks on how to monetize a game well. Some of you will probably be slightly shocked by all the tricks I have listed here, but I'll leave the morality of it out of the talk. We can discuss it if we have time later.
On top of that, Jim compiled various testimonials from people with addictive tendencies who decided to seek respite from gambling through video games only to find themselves right back into that void. Testimonials ranged from people who got addicted to Overwatch's cosmetic loot boxes to those who got addicted to Call of Duty or FIFA's pay-to-win or pay-to-gain advantage microtransactions and loot boxes. One testimonial in particular highlighted how he tried to get away from gambling by finding a healthy alternative and replacement, but he found that almost every game he booted up seemed to prey on his addictive tendencies through monetization that encourages excessive compulsive spending. So I'd like to read you this testimonial actually, which touches upon so many good points on why video game monetization is so scummy. It reads, quote, "I spent a good portion of my life constantly high and wasting all of my money on drugs. I met my partner, now fiance, in World of Warcraft, and with her help, I finally managed to get sober. One big part of going through rehab and trying to control my addictive behaviors, one of the things I learned was to try and find a healthy replacement for the substance. Obviously, being the chronically ill hermit and geek that I am, I turned my focus back to my childhood love of video games. This, ironically, was around the time of the beta of Overwatch, and me and my World of Warcraft guildies loved it. It was so much fun. I love the idea of collecting cosmetics for my favorite characters as I am a big collector, and naturally fell into the trap of loot boxes. I kept getting sucked in with the spend more to get more trap that a lot of publishers use to get people spending. I lost track of the amount of money I spent, but thanks to rehab, I could quickly identify that this was dangerous behavior and I quit playing the game. I spent the next few years jumping from game to game, leaving when the microtransactions got too much to bear. Rift was a nice distraction from World of Warcraft, and I had played it from beta, and then it went free to play with loot boxes as well as a cash shop. Guild Wars 2, cash shop and loot boxes. Deus Ex, a series I treasure, microtransactions. Assassin's Creed Origins, same thing. The place where I once found distraction and salvation is now preying upon my addictive nature and impulse spending problems. It hurts, it really does. I have to turn away from $100 games because they've implemented microtransactions, and the idea of popping in a few bucks to make life easier is so tempting, and I keep falling for it. My fiance has now taken away both my debit card and my PayPal details to try and curb this.